And a few things you need to know about me before we start. I love science, I love math, I love science fiction, and I'm a huge space fan, or as I like to affectionately refer to myself, an astronaut. So my presentation is all about space. And before we go to space, though, we should focus on my community service. With my church group, I worked at Idaho Servant Adventures in near the Coeur d'Alene River in Idaho. We went to a camp and we spent the afternoons and evenings at the camp and spent the mornings serving in the community. I'd been there 3 times before, and other times I'd done things like working in people's yards and painting, so I thought I had a pretty good idea of what I was going to be doing. So you can imagine my surprise when I found out that we were going to be putting on a day camp, which was one of my first experiences working with children. So it was a big jump for me, but it was well worth it. I learned a lot, particularly the importance of relationships. That picture right there, that's a picture of me with a boy named Jacob, who just moved to Idaho from Michigan, so he didn't really have any friends. So the 2 of us kind of gravitated towards each other, and we got to know each other really well. So it was nice to be there for him and be that friend that he really needed. And I also learned the importance of working in groups, because when you're working in a group, you can accomplish just about anything you set your mind to, such as, next slide. Yes, it worked. I wasn't working on Mrs. Wiley's computer when I did my practice, but such as space exploration. Next. So one of the obvious benefits of space exploration is technological advancement. That right there, that's the guidance computer for the Apollo 11 spacecraft. And if it looks like just a glorified calculator, that's because that's basically what it is. But it was one of the most advanced computer systems that they had at the time. And nowadays we have a computer that's like millions of times more powerful than that in our pockets right now. So another piece of technology that came indirectly from space exploration is CAT scans. And I like this picture because it's a cat being scanned by a CAT scanner. But CAT scans originally were used to detect imperfections in spacecraft parts, because in space, a small problem can eventually develop into a huge problem, and you really don't want that to happen. But nowadays they're used for medical technology and they save lives. So next. Even something as inconspicuous as our shoes owes something to space exploration, because NASA made huge advancements in the technology of insoles, because when you're walking around in a really heavy spacesuit with tons of equipment, as anyone who's ever been backpacking can attest, you better hope you have some comfortable shoes. And NASA, shoe companies worked with NASA and found that that same technology can be applied to athletic shoes, because the strain on your feet as you're running is similar to the strain of carrying heavy objects. And if those aren't enough, here's a few more. I don't have enough time to talk about them all, but they're all really fascinating. And a lot of experts agree that our eventual goal with space exploration should be colonization, and I would agree with that. One of the most interesting reasons I found is that there's a lot of evidence that suggests that our ancient civilizations survived based on our seemingly irrational need to explore and colonize other areas, because our relatives, the Neanderthals, they went extinct and we didn't, and their remains are not found very far from where they appear to have originated, whereas humans obviously have spread all over the world. Another reason is our population is increasing rapidly, and we are running out of resources and running out of space. And we can either just let ourselves hit whatever the carrying capacity of humans is on Earth, which I don't really want to be around when that happens, because people in some parts of the world are already having to decide how many children people can have and who can have children, and it's really not a situation we want to happen worldwide. And finally, Stephen Hawking coined space exploration as like an insurance policy for the entire human race, because it's something we didn't really have to think about back when we thought we were confined to this one planet. But we really are one natural disaster, one worldwide climate shift, one asteroid impact from being wiped out as a civilization. And we could end up like the dinosaurs, who, I don't need to remind anyone, once ruled the world, and now they're gone. So another benefit to space exploration that has been seen in history is how it inspires cooperation between nations in ways many other international cooperation efforts can't really do. So, which is strange to think about, considering space exploration began during the Cold War as a series of geopolitical stunts between the Soviet Union and the United States to prove who could most effectively launch weapons of mass destruction at each other. So, but we went from that to the international cooperation we see today, such as on the International Space Station. Currently, there's usually around 6 crew members on the station at one time. Right now, the 6 are shown up there. There's 3 Russians, 2 Americans, and 1 British. And I think the reason why the Russians get to have the most is because, as you can see from this diagram, which shows the breakdown of the space station based on which countries built which parts. The Russians built the Soyuz capsules, and those are the emergency evacuation capsules. So I think that they kind of get to decide, they get to have the most people because of that. So as you can see right now, the space station is mostly built by the United States, which you can't really see because it's kind of pixelated, but the United States is in yellow and Russia is in red, which makes sense because we are historically the 2 biggest spacefaring nations, but other countries have started to add parts too, including Europe, Canada, and even
Attention, student Megan Wardman, please report to the office. Megan Wardman, please report to the office.
And even Brazil, which I found surprising because I didn't know that Brazil had a space program, so that's kind of interesting. Currently there are 16 countries that have contributed to the space station's operation. And a quote that I think really embodies the idea of the International Space Station and the idea of cooperation through space exploration comes from a former International Space Station crew member and Russian cosmonaut, Oleg Kononenko, who said, people on the ground sometimes fail to hear or see each other. In space, this is impossible. Everyone is important here, and the success of the program, and sometimes even life, depends on what each and every one of us does. So this is a perfect example of how cooperation can be achieved. And I think it's really important to realize, in a place like this, they don't care about their race. They're just people, and they rely on each other. And I think we can apply that on a larger scale to Earth, because we are Americans, but we're also just humans, and we're residents of one Earth, and we really need to cooperate in order to continue our existence. So, which brings me to my post-high school plan. I'm going to be attending George Fox University, and I'm going to be going for a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. And hopefully I can use that in the future to go into space exploration and help make that happen. After that, I'll probably pursue a graduate degree in engineering. Either I'll stick with mechanical or I'll go into a more specialized field like robotics or aerospace. And I really want to get a career in space, possibly at NASA. That would be my dream job, but I'm reminded of something my dad told me, who's a park employee. Never get a government job. So these days there's lots of private space exploration companies that are cropping up that I could also go for. And I also want to continue with my service mindset. One of the things that attracted me to George Fox University is that their junior year, all their junior engineering students do a service project called Servant Engineering, and they use all the skills that they learned in that year and their previous 2 years to do a project for the community, or if they're studying abroad in the country that they're studying in. And an example of that we heard about when I visited there is one student built for, there was a woman who was an athlete and she was disabled. So he built a mechanism that allowed her to connect her athletic wheelchair to her regular wheelchair so that she could get it to and from the locker room easier, which is something that you might not think would be a big deal, but it really was a big deal for her. It was a major convenience, and it really, I really want to do things like that. I want to see problems and use the skills, the passions that I have for math and science, and turn it into something real. So, thank you. Any questions? I put this slide up here because I knew I'd forget to ask for questions if I did. Yes?
Do you know what parts of the country or what companies actually work in this? Where would you go work eventually if you got into the space program?
I haven't really gotten that far in my plan, to be honest. I'm kind of taking it one step at a time at this point, but NASA operates all over the country. They have the Jet Propulsion Lab in California. There's Houston, in Houston, obviously. Yeah, they also have things in Florida, so.
So you don't want to work at NASA?
I would like to. I would like to work at NASA, but the problem is that NASA is funded by the government, which the government doesn't always want to fund space exploration, so.
I grew up on Edwards Air Force Base, so we had NASA right there.
Yeah, but I really would like to work at NASA because I'm a really big fan of their work, I guess.
And you don't want to be an astronaut?
I don't think my mom would want me to be an astronaut. But if, I don't think I'm really cut out to be an astronaut, but if the opportunity came, I wouldn't refuse it.
My dad used to bring me astronaut food home, so we would try that.
Yes?
So you mentioned funding. So whether it's government funding or private funding, you obviously have a real passion in this. And after the Apollo 11, or during the Apollo 11 mission, a lot of people I'm sure saw that movie. It seemed like the interest in space, was just kind of becoming, commonplace. We're very excited about it. Unless the Challenger or Columbia occurs like a catastrophic thing occurs, people don't see real interest. So how would you use your passion to try to get that word out more, and in order to get people interested, and at the same time try to support funding for something?
Well, I think one of the problems with funding is that the space exploration is really kind of like an economic sink right now. I mean, we put a lot of money into it and we don't get a lot of money back, which, I mean, I just spent the last 10 minutes talking about all the benefits that come from that money, but unfortunately, the way our world works right now, we really need to get some more economic incentives into space exploration, things like maybe, imagine if you could go out and pay, like, I don't know how much it would be, but you could pay some money and you could go spend a week at a space hotel. I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in that, so that would bring in both the interest and the economic incentives for more companies to pursue space exploration.